Hey guys, I'm back. Nice to see everybody again. Yeah, I let you guys know that I was going through a bit of chaotic things in regard to my medication. So praise God, I think that's all looking better right now. So I wanted to come back on here and make another video. This is, this channel I have intended to use, to share the dreams and visions that the Lord gives me currently, but it's also a lot about my testimony. And a story I've really been wanting to share that is from a long time ago, is really a testimony to how the Lord has given me so much grace in my questions, I guess. Like, I know that we all question God, but as I shared on my first video, I am not from Houston. I actually ended up coming to Houston with the father of my daughter. We were engaged at the time, and he is an oil and gas engineer. Okay, so that's how I ended up in Houston. And I brought this up in my leukemia testimony because I didn't know, obviously, I was going to get cancer. I didn't know I was going to have a very aggressive form of leukemia that would have been nearly impossible to treat in the really small border town where I came from, up on the Canadian border, that only has like 10,000 people in that town. Like, obviously, that would not have been good. They would have either sent me to Houston or, I just wouldn't have made it. Don't get me wrong. I think that, God obviously doesn't need doctors or need medicine to heal. He can heal without any of that, just supernaturally on his own. But I do believe that God uses doctors. And in my case, God definitely used doctors and medicine, just as we see like Luke being a doctor in the Bible. Like, I definitely do not believe that God is against medicine. And in my case, he's made it very clear to me that he brought me here to have access to a lot of the exceptional medical care and specifically cancer care that Houston is known for internationally, which I had no idea. Like, I knew about oil and gas. I did not know about the cancer treatment that Houston is known for, or actually it being like a museum hub, and I'm in the arts, so that was all news to me. But I mentioned that when things didn't work out with me and my daughter's father, when he basically did not step up to the plate the way that he had spoken and had basically made all of these oral, verbal, and even written type commitments. We had combined bank accounts, we had bought a house together, but during COVID we had not gotten legally married, outside of, depending on what lawyer you speak to, maybe like a common law type of sense, because we didn't want to have like some shotgun wedding without, at least me, without my family being there. Like, that was more of my rationale, was like, okay, this man has committed to me. I trust his commitment. I don't need him to like prove it. Do you know what I mean? Like, I know that God has heard what we've said to one another, so I don't need like somebody else to hear it right now. Not that other people didn't hear it, they definitely did. Like, it was discussed between families. Like, this was a done deal for me, which is why I moved down here when I was pregnant and bought this house, and even like had his last name on a lot of like my stuff, like gym memberships, that type of thing, house deeds where we were on the deed of the house together. I'm kind of rambling, but I'm just trying to give you guys a backstory. Like, this was not like some uncommitted type relationship. This, in my books, and we spoke privately a lot of the time, him and I, at the time, I was like, am I your wife? Like, basically, are we married? Like, do you view this as a marriage? And his answer was always yes to me. So I feel like the presence of God, like God hears every conversation you have. I think that's where the Bible says, like, let your yes be yes and your no be no. Like, you don't have to swear necessarily by this thing or that thing, in the sense of God hears you. Like, God hears what you say. So be careful what you say in all your conversations, because I don't believe necessarily that because something is not said in the presence of a bunch of other people, that God doesn't take those promises or those vows seriously. Like, I still have a lot of questions for God. I still have a lot of confusion about what that situation even was. Like, I've repented for areas where we should have done things more like the right way, the more traditional way. But I'm also not so religious in the sense where I believe that, X plus Y equal, like I think that it's not just like a formula, that God uses to measure our commitment in the words that are exchanged between people, and the commitments and the vows that we make to him. And so basically, long story short, in my mind, like him and I, we were like a done deal. That doesn't mean the relationship was perfect. And in a lot of ways, I shouldn't have been in that relationship because it was an abusive relationship. Like that is the real problem of why I shouldn't have stuck around. But in my mind, I was already committed. So long story short, as I mentioned in my first testimony video, our daughter was born. There had been a lot of fighting like during COVID, but I had gotten us into like couples counseling. I was trying to work through him with all those issues. And in my mind, like I had already made this commitment to him. So I was basically like in this relationship, like for better or for worse. And I grew up in like a broken home. So I definitely did not want to raise my daughter that way. And I thought, okay, like, this is it. Like we made this commitment. We're stuck together. We have a child. Like we have to do right by our child and basically do right by God and do right by what we said to one another, even though it wasn't like formalized. In a super non-debatable sense. Like there are legalities to that, but it was not like, we never had like a marriage certificate. We were never formally married by any kind of clerk or the church or anything like that, right? It was more of like a common law type situation, if anything, but also like what we had said in private conversations and through texts and that type of thing. And like having our names combined on a lot of documents. But then after COVID ended and all the restrictions lifted, basically at that point I was like, okay, like, yeah, we have issues, but we're still committed. We still have to, we still have to follow through on this. Like, because his company policy was that, so he told me, I don't know, but that unless we had like an actual marriage certificate license, like I could not go on his health insurance. And I was starting to have bruising from what I now know was leukemia. I had was aging off of my parents' health insurance because I was 26. And so the whole plan was for me to go on to his, and he wouldn't put me on. And to me, that raised a red flag because, again, like I said, I'm not really super religious in the sense of like having to follow a certain formula of like, this is only official if you do X, Y, and Z. Like, I just have never been like, I don't know, for good or for maybe I'm incorrect, but I just think it's a lot deeper than that, like making a covenant or like a commitment that way. Like, I don't just view it as like the law. That's not how I view things. And so I basically was not questioning him up until that point. I didn't feel like rushed, like we have to do this on paper right now. Like at the time, and like my mindset has changed since then. Like I did not view that as being like super pressing just for the sake to be like, oh yeah, look, I have this thing to prove it, this piece of paper. Like, I think I could have had more discernment and wisdom, but I know like my heart was in the right place with like, I was telling the truth when I said that I was like fully committed basically. And so, but his company needed that license. And so that lack of ability to step up in the absence of problems in the relationship in order for me to be able to show that certificate to go on the health insurance, to be able to go to the doctor, was a huge red flag for me. That, as I mentioned, basically expedited our breakup. So, I had pulled him aside and basically said, look, like I haven't questioned your commitment, but now there's no reason, like we can have like our families here if you want to have like a wedding. There's nothing stopping us besides the fact that we have some problems in our relationship. So like, and that doesn't change the fact, those problems does not change the context under which you brought me down here and I followed you down here for your job. So like, I need to get on health insurance. And he was like, oh, I'll pay for a separate plan for you. But that would have been like $300, $400 extra a month. And like, I viewed that as a waste of like our family's resources and future. I was like, that's a huge insult as a woman and like a slap in the face that you would rather, I was starting to feel just like a kept woman. Like, okay, you're going to pay for my insurance separately. Like that, we're not a family if that's what you're doing. So long story short, I gave him that choice. I was like, we either do this, we either actually, you do what you said you were going to do. There's no excuses anymore, or I can't stay with you because I'm not religious. I'm not legalistic, but this is like showing me that you lied to me basically about your level of commitment, or else not that the paper is what defines the covenant, but like you not doing it shows me like that makes me think that we are not on the same page, because otherwise it's not where the power lies, but why not just do it type of a thing. And so then I was like, okay, like if I'm questioning that I'm living potentially with this man who is not actually fully committed, does not really view me the way that he says he views me, then like that puts me in a situation where I'm in sin, and like I can't be living in sin. Like this, like things obviously did not start off on the right way. Like I got pregnant, you know, all this stuff happened, but then we really tried to correct it. At least I tried to correct it. Like I was being honest the whole time, but I was like, okay, like if this is not what it has been presented as to me, then like I need to get out, basically. And that all happened. Okay, so this was back in 2021, and this is just at the beginning when I had really been like, okay, God, like it's you or the world. Like I can't have both. I know I'm probably gonna like lose a bunch of stuff. This is gonna be so hard, but like I cannot willfully, cognizantly, now that I'm more awake to the reality of the situation I've gotten myself in here with this man, like I cannot continue to live in sin, like knowingly. So basically, I was like, you know, I don't want to break up with you. I meant it when I was fully committed, but if I'm now questioning your commitment to me, like I can't be questioning my standing with God. Like you either do this and put me on your insurance and show that you are like a family man and committed to me, or like I cannot stay. Not because of what I want, but because of what God wants, basically what God says is right. And he left. Like we never had a conversation. We had been engaged. I had moved across the country. He never even talked to me, never even basically told me why he couldn't commit. He just left and left me alone in the house with like our baby. And then I ended up giving him the house because I had been a stay-at-home mom. He'd been paying for the house. I didn't even care about the house. I just wanted my baby. That's pretty much all I cared about. I had to fight for that as well. But my parents had moved down or they moved down later, like permanently, but my parents had come down to help me move out of like my home, basically. And I got my name off of the house, the title, everything like that. But it was like the last day of packing up to move up out of this house, obviously very emotional. And I was just crying out to God because this was my house that I had picked out. Like I had chosen this house, worked with a realtor. Like this was my home where I had had my baby. Like this was so special to me. And, I basically cried out to God in my room, and I was like, God, like I was at a low point, and like I'm not proud to admit this, but this is the truth. Like I basically was like, God, like I need you to basically give me a sign, because every single time I asked him, like, should I go to Houston, the answer was always yes. Not necessarily, I mean, I feel like God was telling me that I was supposed to stay with this man, but like more than that, he was like, you need to go to Houston. You need to go to Houston. And I never understood why, because there was so much like abuse and neglect and just mistreatment in this relationship. I was like, why do you want me going? And like looking back, again, it was for the cancer care that's here. I now know that that was why, because none of it made sense to me, right? And I basically was like, okay, God, like, what was that about? Like, why did you tell me to come down here? But I told God, like this, again, like I am not condoning this, okay? I'm only human, right? I was like, God, you have 1 week. You literally have 1 week to give me a direct message through a person. And my exact words to God were like, through like how there were prophets in like the Old Testament who would go to people with messages, like I want you to send me a person to give me a message that I know is from you about the situation I'm in, because like what the heck, basically, right? Like I was mad. And that was that, right? So then the next morning there's like odds and ends. My mom is packing up the last box. She's like, get your daughter, you know, out of the house, basically, like take her out the house, because she was crawling all over the floor. It wasn't really like good, you know, just trying to get the last bit of the stuff up off the floor. It wasn't like safe. And so I was like, just take her, go somewhere. I love the art museum. So I took my daughter to the art museum, and literally as soon as I got there, this woman who said that she was a security guard for the museum, but like I've never seen her again. She literally, I walked off the elevator with my stroller. My baby's like 8 months old. She looks directly at me from across the room, walks straight up to me, and she says verbatim, I am a prophet of the Lord, and he has sent me to give you a message from him. She said, don't worry. God is going to bless you with a beautiful new home. And again, this was the day I'm moving out of my house, and I'm like so sad. Like I hadn't been crying that morning. It didn't look like it, but the night before I'd been crying and like crying out to God. She was like, God, the Lord has seen everything that you've been through. He has seen all the people who were like supposed to stand by you, who didn't stand by your side, who were supposed to stand by your side. But the Lord is going to bless you with abundance and a beautiful new house, like a beautiful new home. And he said, your daughter is anointed, like she is meant to be here. And she went on to tell me a couple of other things, but I was just, I mean, my jaw like hit the floor because, and I started crying because just like 3 days before I had hired my lawyer, because I knew I was going to have to fight for custody because, again, he has like a big job. I was just like a stay-at-home mom. Like, I have an art background. Like, we are not on the same page as far as like career. We're just not. And I was like, oh no. And I'm also like almost 10 years younger than him. I was like, what if he gets custody? Because I do live in Texas, which is like tends to be pro-mom, but I live in Harris County, which is like super liberal. And obviously they do not go by the biblical type of like ideas about who, children and gender equality, like men and women are the same. I'm like, no, I'm going to have to fight. I'm going to have to fight so hard for like to get custody. Like I was so afraid of that. And obviously it's all like LGBTQ, like men and women are the same. Men can have babies. It's like stuff I don't agree with at all, but it's just a liberal, it's a liberal county. That's how all liberal counties are. Like here recently, there was a case of a 6-month-old baby that got 50-50 custody between the mom and the dad when the baby was breastfeeding. So obviously like demonic, but like that's how it is. I mean, it's a major city, Texas or not. And so I was like freaking out. And I just hired my attorney because he was texting like he had an attorney, and I was like, it matters who files first for custody. So I was like, okay, like I have to file first and take the initiative, because if this goes to trial, that puts me on the offense instead of on the defense. So it gives me a better shot. So I did that out of like absolute necessity. And my mom is also like a family attorney and was like not licensed in Texas yet, but it was like, you have to do this. Like, this is how you protect yourself and your daughter. So basically I ended up filing, and this woman also said to me, she's like, you are about to enter into a tug of war with these people. And again, him and his family had all turned against me at this point. She said, you are about to enter into a tug of war with the people who are supposed to stand by you, who did not stand by your side. And she said, make sure you read all of the fine print before signing anything. Read the fine print. And again, I just hired my lawyer. So she walked up to me and straight up, she introduced herself like, I'm a prophet of the Lord. He's given me a message to give to you. And it was all about how like basically my daughter's father did not stand by me. He did not step up to the plate. Like, him and his family had walked away from me. I was about to go into a legal battle. I was losing my house, but I was going to get a new home, and that God had seen all the pain and suffering I'd been through. And I was like, whoa. Like, I was so cheeky, like, talk about sin. I was like, you have 1 week, God, like you have a week. And in his grace, in his incredible grace and patience and understanding for my like pain, he didn't even take 24 hours to answer my prayer. So like, I don't think like making demands of God like that or giving God ultimatums is good, but it just goes to show like he is so patient with us and has so much grace for us. And then I ended up getting, moving into a townhome, doing all of that separately. And I would still go back and be like, God, why did you tell me to come to Houston? Like, I know that you told me to come here, but why? And it was silent. And like all of my friends knew. I would be like, God is just not answering me. Is he mad at me? Why is he not answering my prayer? And I still didn't know I was going to get cancer. Like, I had cancer at the time, probably like the bruising and stuff I mentioned, but I didn't know that. So I was still like, okay, but why? Like, were we supposed to work out? Like, why did I come here? And I didn't get those answers about the cancer thing until way later. And like, even that, I still have questions. Like, how is everything ultimately going to play out? But like, I just feel so, like, I knew I heard him tell me to come here with this person in this very unideal situation where this is not a man following God. I was not protected or covered the way I needed to be. Like, maybe in terms of like physical, like bare survival needs, but not emotionally, not spiritually, not like in terms of be feeling safe, nothing like that. So I know that God obviously didn't want me at the time in that situation, but that's why I was so confused. I was like, well, then why was I supposed to come to Houston? And I just wanted to share this testimony with you guys about this extremely specific encounter when I was just at my wit's end. I was about ready to give up on God. I was like, look, if this whole thing is not just like, in my imagination, like, you really do have my back, you really do love me, like, I need you to literally, I gave God a week. Like, please don't. I'm so embarrassed to say this, but it just shows, like, not that he condones that, but his grace for us is so big. So if there's one takeaway you could take away from this video, is please just know that God will meet us in our weakness. He'll meet us in our weakness. He'll meet us in our place of impatience, our place of frustration. Like, he sees and understands our pain. Just like, maybe like my daughter's a toddler now. I'm not going to condone her stomping her foot and being like, give it to me now, mommy. But like, if I have the knowledge that she's really hurting or she really needs something, like, I'll overlook the manner in which she asked to meet her in her need. And like, that's what God did for me with that prophet that he literally sent to me. And I was so specific. I said, like in the Old Testament, because I didn't know everything I know now about like the book of Acts or the fact that prophecy is still, I thought that was like an Old Testament thing only. So I was like, give me a message like you did in the Old Testament from someone who says they're a prophet, and make it about my life. And literally within 24 hours, God answered my prayer. So that's my story time for the day. And again, that was like 3 years ago, but that was such an incredible, like, it just strengthened my faith. Not that I didn't have little breakdowns and meltdowns with God after that and stomp my foot, because I totally did. But like, I just wanted to share that, you know, like, I'm human. We're all human, you know? And I think people who come on a platform, they're not always like honest about like, you know, what they struggle with. So I just want to let you guys know, like, yeah, I straight up did that, and I'm not proud of it, but it's more about the goodness of God. So we can rest in his goodness. And yeah, have a good day, you guys. Bye.